Welcome everyone to another episode of Rick Reads Comics. Today we are going to go through issue number 4 of the Silver Surfer. This is the trade. You just saw the cover on the thumbnail and then also on the intro. But yeah, we've been through issue 1 through 4. Today is going to be number 4 and it's called The Good, the Bad, and the Uncanny from February 1969. And last week, or the last video, I think it was last week, the last video teased that it was Thor versus the Silver Surfer. So that is exactly what we're going to do. The first issue showed the origin of the Silver Surfer. Then issue number 2, he fought some aliens, which are the Brotherhood of the Badoon. And then after that, last week, we saw him fight Mephisto in his own realm and became victorious with that. He got to meet his love, Shalabal, after he lost her from Galactus. They got to see each other for one last time before she was ripped away again. So he is still depressed and he is still confined to Earth. There's Mephisto. And so it's been pretty hard for the Silver Surfer. He is stuck on Earth. He's depressed. He's not Norrin Rad anymore. He gave up everything to save his planet, including the one that he loves. So now we are going to jump forward. The Silver Surfer, number 4, Skyrider of the Spaceways, is from 1969. And we have Loki here sitting in his signature seat, his signature pose that he always does. And this one's The Good, the Bad, and the Uncanny by Stan Lee and John Buscema. Sal Buscema is the inker, Artie Simek is the letterer, and it says perhaps the greatest fantasy saga of all time. So we'll start off reading the first panel, and then I'll kind of just take you through it a little bit. I'm gonna try to make this one shorter because a lot of these videos have been like 20 minutes plus. So we'll see how I can do. Also, this one is the way they write Thor and Loki and the Asgardian speech is kind of hard to read sometimes, and especially if I'm going to be reading it out loud. So, forgive me for that. I'm going to stumble. But let's start off right here. It says, in far off enchanted Asgard, lost in his own sinister thoughts, sits Loki, god of evil, prince of conjurers. And when Loki broods, let all who live beware. Alright, so we have Loki here. He throws his drink that he had. I think that was a drink. Yes, it was. He throws it, smashes it, and he says, the mighty Thor must die. So Loki's been trying to kill Thor. They're brothers. They don't like each other. Well, Thor likes Loki, I guess. Well, maybe, in the beginning. But now Loki's trying to kill him, and he keeps failing. So he is trying to devise another way to do it. So he says he's going to go through the Cavern of Shadows, and to find a way to rid him of his brother. So he goes, and then he says, I must have a potion, such as the only power of darkness can brew. A potion to pierce the veil of time, to shatter the fabric of distance, to set free the mystic essence, the ethereal ego of Loki, god of evil. And he says, now thus unfettered by space and time, I shall roam the endless cosmos. So he's floating across in some ethereal form. And this art looks awesome, the way it is, and the way it's colored. Looks really good. And then he says, until my vast quest be done. Now let the mightiest of all appear before me, and then I behold the Hulk. So he's trying to find somebody to defeat Thor, to kill Thor, and he says, let the mightiest be, and there's Hulk. But he sees Hulk, and he says he will not do. He says, but thou in brute strength, he seems boundless. He is lacking in skill. So he's not the smartest, person to fight Thor, so he says he needs somebody else with a little more skill. So then he finds the Thing. And he says, what of him who is called the Thing? And he says, grotesque though he be, still is he human. And surely no mortal may oppose mighty Thor. So he sees the Thing and says, no, he ain't going to do because he's immortal. So then he goes over here and finds Hercules, son of Zeus. And he says, would that thou might were mine to enlist. But not even Loki would brave the wrath of Olympus assembled. So he would try to get Hercules, but he says, but he doesn't want to mess with Olympus if they find out what's going on. Doesn't want to, feel their wrath. So he says, I must search elsewhere. So he searches, and then he sees the Silver Surfer. And I really love this panel, the way it is right there. It's like he's just kind of drawn different in this comic. And so he sees him, and he says, tis a man form, but as never before have Loki eyes beheld his like. And then he says, again and again, as though by madness beset, he doth hurl himself against an unseen barrier. So this is Thor or Silver Surfer still trying to get out of Galactus's barrier because he defied Galactus. He has been forced and imprisoned basically on Earth with an invisible barrier around the planet that he can't break through. So he's stuck there. So Loki says, I must know more about him. He digs into his past with his Loki powers that he has, and he sees that he is Norrin Rad, and he gave himself to Galactus to save his planet. And he says, how noble, how valiant, how loathsomely witless. And he says, 'twas Galactus who transformed Norrin Rad into the Silver Surfer. And though he gained rare power cosmic, that which he cherished most of all was to be forever denied him. So he knows that he lost Shalabal. So he sees that he defied Galactus also, and that he is forced to be here. And then he says, which this is kind of just like a recap over everything, and that's pretty cool the way they did it. And he says, then that is why Galactus hath imprisoned him upon the planet Earth. I have seen enough. And he says, I need but promise to return him to his loved one, and he will do my bidding. And he says, but what is this I see? And he says, another did him tempt in self same manner. But where Mephisto failed, there shall cunning Loki find success. So he says he's going to try the same plan that Mephisto did. He's going to promise him Shalabal if he'll work with him, and he's going to succeed this time. So he gains his form again. He goes back to a person, and then he takes off. And then now it's showing in Asgard, the Warriors 3. There is Wolstag, there is Fandral, and then there is Hogun, and they are Thor's friends, his friend group. And I, when reading this, I really didn't know that Volstagg was kind of like a coward a little bit. Volstagg got in a fight with these guys, I guess, and then they came to help him. And he said, I really didn't need your help. And they're like, but Volstagg, you didn't do anything. We're the ones that stopped these guys. And so he's kind of a, kind of a, I thought he was going to be tougher than this from like the movies and different stuff, but he's kind of like an oaf. So he says, y'all go do your thing. I'll stand here and guard them while they're knocked out. And then they start getting up, and then he takes off running again and says, they are awake. Hogun, Fandral, wait for lion-hearted Volstagg. I trust not myself with the mere 3 foes. If I grow careless, think of the harm my great prowess might inflict. So he's just like kind of all talk a little bit, and yeah, he's not really tough. He's kind of a scaredy cat. So they are walking and they run into Loki, and Loki says, at last hath Loki found the way to vanquish mighty Thor, knowing that these are Thor's friends. And he says, and not that lives shall save him. Fandral, why didst thou not heed me? Volstagg says when he runs up. And he says, quiet, quaking one, there is villainy afoot. The god of thunder must be warned. And he says, let us thin away. What chance hath Thor if Volstagg be not near? So anyways, they take off to go warn Thor, and they're telling Thor what's going on, and he says, well, it's Loki, and we shouldn't be afraid. But they're like, why would he tell you the plan if he wasn't sure of success? So Thor gets ready to rally the troops, I guess, and he says, okay, then we'll prepare. So it says, and so speaks fearless Volstagg. I say thee nay. So he says the time for speech is past. And so Loki's watching all this, and he says, Thor says, if war be Loki's aim, then war shall Loki have. And then Loki says, how pathetically predictable is my doomed stepbrother. He reacts as Loki planned. But master, a forewarned is a foe forearmed. So that's what Loki's servant says. And he says, be silent, fool. What canst thou know of Loki's cunning plan? And he says, the scene is set, now let the play begin. But first I go to find the Silver Surfer. So now that his plan is in motion and everything's set, he's going to go find the Silver Surfer. And let's see if his plan actually works. This panel is awesome. So Thor, or Silver Surfer, I don't know why I keep saying Thor. Silver Surfer has been, in all the last 3 issues, he's been trying to find a place, and he feels out of place. And he can't find anywhere that he can, be at peace. So he's gone through the humans. They always get mad at him and fight him, throw him in jail, and crazy stuff like that. He's fought in space with the aliens. They take advantage of him. And of course, Mephisto tries to play him. So he's really depressed here. And look where he is. He's among the animals. These are some dangerous animals. Not all of them are, peaceful. And he's here, just hanging out and just chilling. And it's pretty cool. So if he's talking right here, well, let's go up here. I'll read this panel. And he says, at that very moment, in another world, further from Asgard than the mind can imagine, yet ever as close as Loki's temporal spell, and it has Silver Surfer, and he says, amongst the mightiest, the most supposedly savage of all Earth's creatures, I sit in peace, I dwell in safety. For food has been plentiful, and no longer do they hunger. It says, unlike the humans who call you beast, there is no violence in your heart, no hint of avarice, no smoldering hate. Yet man who has won dominion over all this world is a stranger to peace, a prisoner caught in the web of his own nameless fears. So he sees his reflection here. He's covering his face like he's crying almost. He's very depressed. And he says, and here stand I, hopelessly trapped in a world of madness, where reason is shunned while violence prevails. And now, in order to speed this up a little bit, Loki shows up, says, Silver Surfer, I have found thee at last. And he says, who calls? And he explains, let now thy head be bowed, thy heart filled with awe. Thou dost behold Loki, son of Odin, immortal of Asgard, Loki whom fate hath decreed that thou shalt serve. So he says, I serve none but the conscience within my breast. And he says, fool, thy mouthings have no meaning against the will of Loki. For the power I hold is that of a god. So basically, Loki right here is trying to test Silver Surfer and see how powerful he actually is. So he blasts him, and Thor, or I don't know, once again I said Thor. Silver Surfer is trying to flee. He says you can't flee, so he wants to find out if he has the power or if it's his board that's doing it. Can he fly without the board? So he blasts it, and then Silver Surfer falls off, and he falls in the water. So he says, oh no, it must be the board that has the power. And then he says, wrongly have I chosen. Thou art not the one to serve me. Thus I go find another. Amongst the humans shall I seek. He says, and if I find one not, then all mankind shall pay the price. And so Silver Surfer comes out of the water and says, no, it must not be. Power such as this can decimate a planet. So he takes off because he knows Loki is very powerful and he doesn't want him to hurt the humans. So this is all part of Loki's plan. And he says, ah, 'tis as I thought, the surfer follows, and cunning Loki yet shall win the day. So he takes off and he says, I have to give him something to show that I mean business. So he blasts the building, all the stuff starts falling, and it's going to crush people. So he swoops in and saves them. And he says, enough, you shall not harm these hapless humans. If there must be battle, let it be with me. And he says, never, in the eyes of Loki thou art unworthy. Now, Space Wanderer, let thee be gone, whilst my wrath doth rage a city must perish. Never my power cosmic will give you pause. Then you do choose to fight on Loki's terms. And he says, the terms are mine, only the blame is yours. And so Loki thinking, he says, he strikes with skill and bludgeoning strength, but no match is he for Thor. Still further must I goad him, still more must I observe. So he makes the fighting more intense, so that way he can gauge how powerful he is. So he hits him real hard, and then he says, but I knocked him down with one blow. And then he says, but he is unharmed. His silvery slick skin is, absorbing the impact, and it doesn't even look like it hurt him. And he says, no single blow can harm one who rides the meteor swarm, one who has basked in the glow of 1,000 suns. Man, that Stanley can write, can he? So they go for something different. They stop, trying to shoot or anything, and they start to wrestle a little bit. And he says, know you that I be brother to the god of thunder? And in the veins of Loki's Odin's regal blood doth flow? If your limbs cannot stop me, neither will your empty boasts. And he says, you dare make light of Loki's threats? One who fears nothing dares all. And he says, it cannot be. Thou art thou art but mortal. Thou canst not match my godly force. And Silver Surfer says, though I am mortal born, my power is that of the endless cosmos. So they're in a struggle here, and Loki's surprised at how strong Silver Surfer is. So he says, I know not why we fight, but this I vow. This is Silver Surfer talking. He says, till death itself shall steal my limbs, the surfer shall not yield. And he says, then enough, or then now, but it's like enough. And he says, Loki hath found the one he seeks. Now I'll tell you the truth. So now Loki puts his plot into motion. Now that he knows Silver Surfer can take on Thor, that he's strong enough that he can be the one that kills him, he says, I've come to warn you, and I've come to enlist your help, because Thor is actually evil and he is going to destroy Asgard. So I need you to be my agent to go, because they won't suspect you because you're a stranger. I need you to go and destroy Thor before he destroys Asgard. And he says, what does Asgard have to do with me? And basically Loki promises that he can free Silver Surfer of his barrier that Galactus has made, that he'll be able to get rid of that and and Thor can leave. So he's got his attention now. And he says, only one doth have the power, only one doth have the will. Even as we speak, he doth gather an army about him with which to attack the imperial Allfather. Let thy mind relax whilst I conjure thee a vision. Should he prevail, then all who live are doomed. So he's basically saying, let me show you what Thor is about to do to Asgard. And he conjures a vision, and it shows Thor rallying his troops. And he says, there is the one whom I speak, my wretched brother, the thunder god Thor. And so he's using that vision. He's seeing everything. Really, this is a vision of Thor mustering the people, I guess, for Loki's inevitable attack. He says, thou hast heard my tale. Thou hast seen his legions girding for war. Now how say thee, Silver Surfer? He says, amongst the humans, my life has little worth. If you can send me, I will go to Asgard. And he says, I knew it in his mind. The sight of Thor marshalling his armies did truly deceive him. He should not suspect my accuser brother doth but prepare a defense against Loki himself. And so Silver Surfer now is wondering, if I succeed in my mission, will I again be free to roam the skyways, to return to the one I love? And Loki, of course, is going to lie to him, and he says, thou hast the word of Loki. Now upon thy board the great adventure doth loom ahead. We go to a place that is all place, further than the stars, yet nearer than thy touch. So he tells him to close his eyes. When he opens his eyes, he's there. Behold the realm eternal. There's the rainbow bridge. And he says, you have done it. You have reached Galactus' barrier. And he says, no barrier made by a living being can stand against a god. So he says, I can accompany thee no further. Go thou alone, and none shall suspect. Suspect what? That thy mission is to vanquish Thor. And now farewell. He says, with but a gesture, he's gone. So of course we have Heimdall. He guards the Rainbow Bridge. He says, what are you doing here? Who are you? And he says, I'm the Silver Surfer, and I seek the mighty Thor. And Heimdall sees no weapons on him and says, okay, you're just one man. Thor can take care of himself. Yes, he says, stranger, I grant thee leave to pass. So he's able to get into Asgard. So they're watching back over here, and he says, Master, your plan's working. It's faultless. And he says, be silent, thou. I need no praise from fawning servitor. I must scheme and plan as never before. So he is basically saying, yes, it's worked, but it's not done yet. So he wants him to, step away so he can think, because he's still going to need to do some work here. And he says, I seek an audience with the son of Odin. He said, if thou meanest Thor, he dines within. So this guy goes to announce him, and he says, hey, there's a stranger here, and he's looking for Thor. And he says, stranger in Asgard? 'Tis most passing rare. I say thee admit him. So yeah, let him in. So he goes in, and then he announces him, and he says, he doth claim the name of Silver Surfer. His word saith he his word saith he are for Thor alone. Methinks he hath a grim and troubled mind. Then bid him enter, since we be oh my gosh. Then bid him enter, since we be hosts, he be our guest. Ooh, okay, let me get some tongue twisters on this one. Silver Surfer comes in, and then he says, you are not host, I am not guest. Instead, I come as your accuser. I come to challenge the mighty Thor. He says, odds blood, the madness is upon thee. Refuse me, and the world shall call you cowards. So at that, Thor's friends jump up. They say, he ain't a coward. You can't get to him unless you go through us, basically. Volstagg, of course, is right behind him, trying to say, that. And I'll just read this because it is pretty funny. He says, Volstagg too now leapeth to the fray with the speed of the winter wind. And he says, nay, why leap when I can trick my foe with sly pretense of stumbling? And then they say, pretense, thou clumsy oaf, over an anthill thou couldst not leap. So they call him out on that. That's a little bit of comedy there, but it was pretty funny. So anyway, they say, you can't get to Thor unless you go through us. Thor says, be silent, y'all. Be silent, all. Is Thor not fit to face his foe? So Thor says, I'll face him myself. But before he does that, he goes and talks to him, and he says, never hath Thor a challenge refused, but there be a time, there be a place. First, let us sup, whilst I lend ear to thy complaint. So Silver Surfer sits down, and they start eating. And he says, can such a man be truly evil? How do I explain the love they have for him? And yet, I have pledged my word to Loki. And then Thor is over here thinking, there be more to this man than meets the eye. But patience, soon 'twill all be clear. The tournament begins. So they're going to have a tournament, a jousting. It says, all the hail the champions of the realm. The time has come for jousting. So they're about to eat. They got this thing going on, and Loki's watching still. And Loki says, I fear that Silver Surfer is going to chicken out. He's not going to do what I want him to do. So I'm going to go to my ethereal form again, and I am going to work my magic over there. So he turns into ethereal form. He finds out that Balder showed up. Balder's a bad dude, and Loki's kind of scared of him a little bit. And he says, well, that ain't going to work out. He says, what? Balder hath so soon arrived? But fie upon it, fie upon it, 'tis of little consequence. With dark suspicions must I fill my agent's mind. So he's speaking into his mind again. This is a stranger dines in Balder's place, but no matter, I do content myself to stand. So Balder's pretty nice dude. And he says, suddenly, or Silver Surfer's thinking here, suddenly I sense great evil in the air. But how am I to strike? How can I attack when as yet I have no cause? So there's Loki right there. And so they're watching the battle, and this guy wins, and Thor gives him a saber as a prize. And then Loki speaks to this gladiator that won and says, wait, sheathe not thy sword. Loki now hath use for thee. And he says, thou canst not defy the god of evil. Thou must obey my will. That's what he's thinking. And then he tells the guy, seize thou thy weapon. Now hurl it straight and true. Hurl it at the gleaming stranger, and then cry out. So he hurls the sword and he cries out, death to the Silver Surfer in the name of Thor. And so Silver Surfer gets attacked and it flies by him, but he's able to dodge it. And he says, I am attacked by order of the Thunder God. Then Loki's words were true, but no such deadly blade can outspeed one who dodges comets in their flight. So he dodges it and he thinks that they're attacking him now. And he says, at last, the mask of deception has been stripped from your faces. You stand revealed as murderers all. And then Balder says, nay, ne'er before has such a happenstance occurred. And Thor yells at the gladiator, gladiator, what madness hath possessed thee? Most noble lord, I cannot say. 'Twas as though another didst usurp my will. So Silver Surfer is thinking, as guardian, prepare to defend yourself, or he says that. And then Loki here is saying, 'tis not the deed that angers Thor, 'tis the face that his assassin did fail to slay thee. The face, the fact. So, Silver Surfer hears, Loki's words and is ready to attack. It says, guardian, prepare to defend yourself. And Thor is still trying to talk it out, and he says, I say thee, hold, 'twas not Thor's will to do thee harm. A sudden pounding in my ears, I cannot hear your words. And he says, 'tis Loki's doing, but thou shalt never know. The Silver Surfer says, but it does not matter what you say. I saw what I did see, and I like not what I saw. And so here comes his board, and he starts whizzing around on his board, flying around, and he's messing everything up and shooting everybody with his cosmic rays. And Thor yells out, stranger, stay thy flight. Thor has no wish to do thee harm. He doth ignore thy words, my lord. That's what Sif says. And then Silver Surfer is up here above, and he says, the Thunder God doth plead in vain. Sorry, that's what Loki says. Loki's spell drowns out his voice. Now let the debacle begin. And they say, 'tis useless. He girds once more for the attack. So Silver Surfer comes back around. They're still attacking. Thor finally gets fed up. And then right here, I like this cool, the way they colored it, showing a difference there. But Thor gets fed up, throws his hammer, Mjolnir. It hits the bottom of the board, and Silver Surfer falls down on it, and it throws him from the room. So Thor is finally ready to fight. He goes outside. He says, return thy master, most faithful mallet. Never hath thy prowess failed me. And now must I learn what prompts yon glistening foe. And he says, Thunder God, surrender, or face the cosmic power of the Silver Surfer. What wonderment is this? From his very fingertips flow bolts of living energy. So they're going to tussle a little bit. And Loki, of course, is still here pulling all the strings. And now there is a guy right here, kind of like a sentry guard with a big cannon. He says, interloper, halt, or be thou in thy tracks forever stilled. He's flying by and he says, you think a mere weapon can stop the Skyrider of the spaceways? Then think again, Asgardian, and he blasts it, blows everything up. So then we see Thor rush over to this guy's, where he's laying down. He wants to help him. He says, sentry, thou shouldst not have threatened him. And he says, but he seeks to ravage the realm, my prince. Take unto thyself a healing herb, while Thor now makes his judgment. So he sees this, Silver Surfer sees he just attacked, and he says, I see why Loki had need of me. Asgard has power beyond compare, and the strongest of all is Thor. But this is no time for musing. I must fight on. And then, so Loki's watching. Loki sees what's happening. And he says, see the destruction, see the utter carnage, how it doth warm the royal heart of cunning Loki. Tell me, master, how can how can yon stranger overcome Thor when even thou hast ever failed? He says, fool, hast thou so soon forgot? Loki's power hath been merged with his, although he knows it not. So Merkel, oh, okay. So Loki has merged his power with Thor, even though with Silver Surfer, even though Silver Surfer doesn't know it. So that is why he's stronger. That's why everything's being done. Then we have this messenger running towards Odin. He gives him the note and he says, there is a stranger here fighting Thor. And Loki, Odin is omnipotent because he's a god, and he says, it's all going to be sorted out. Let the battle rage. No harm can come in combat when both hearts be truly pure. Upon itself doth evil feed, and all twill soon be well. So saith Odin. And then he basically says, I'm going to bed. He says, attend me now, for I grow weary. Make ready the bedchamber royal. I thought that was pretty funny. So he says, I'm not even going to bother with this. It's all going to be sorted out. So there's Thor, there's Silver Surfer. They're still battling it out. They're still fighting. And he says, do not pretend with me. I know you plan to overthrow your royal father. He says, villain, none who live speak thus to Thor. Thou shalt not pit father against loyal son, and Mjolnir shall show thee why. And then so he throws the hammer. Silver Surfer tries to outrun it, and then he says, can a mere hammer outfly the Silver Surfer? 'Tis beyond belief. Methinks there be a mystic spell at work. It says, no longer shall I be a target for your hammer. Not while I can keep it from you with a cosmic blast. Keep me from Mjolnir? I say thee nay. And it says, and more, I say thee never. So, he is basically trying to get his hammer back. Silver Surfer is going to keep blasting it away so he can't get it. And he says, by Asgard's golden gates, none but a god can unleash such a power. And he says, I feel as though another hand, not mine, now guides my blows. And he says, as though another will not mine, is forcing me to fight, to hate. So he's starting to feel Loki's influence on him and what's going on. But he keeps continuing to blast the hammer, and he says, I can't every time I raise Mjolnir, he does strike and hurl it from mine anguished hand. So he says, alas, the thunder god is down. So Silver Surfer finally has him down. Loki he's about to make his appearance because he can't just stay there. And he says, now, no need have I for astral form. Since triumph is nigh, I would savor it in flesh and blood. So he is going to just go back to, his wherever he's watching it from. He says, I don't need to be there in astral form. I can just watch because it's about to happen. Silver Surfer has finally defeated Thor. So he says, I have seen his mallet's magic. It is truly more mighty than my cosmic force. Then why should I stay out of reach? Unless, and he says, Loki too has the power of a god. What if he has added to my strength? Thus while we fought, the blows were mine, but the power his. Loki, what knowest thou of Loki? So now Thor's starting to catch on. He knows that he's been in contact with Loki. And he says, 'Twas he who brought me here to save the realm. Then 'tis the master of evil thou dost serve. He says, I serve none but the cause of justice. If Thor hath come to harm, let the perpetrator beware. So now Balder has entered the fray. He says, Balder shall not rest whilst he doth live. And he says again, thy race to the thunder god's aid, ignoring their own safety. Never could evil inspire such devotion. It says, warrior, come no further. There is no cause for us to battle, but we have much to speak of. And he says, my blade alone shall serve as lips. And he says, Balder, no, let him be heard. So he wants to hear more about Loki. He wants to hear what's going on. Balder's ready to fight. But Loki is like, if they stop to speak, give ear to reason, all is lost. Strike now, Balder. Loki bids thee strike. So Balder strikes. Um, Silver Surfer flies around. He shoots his power cosmic, and he says, "Balder, thou shouldst not have Thor, what is amiss, beloved?" He says, "The stranger hurls a cosmic bolt, but Thor shall save his lady." So he dives over there to save Sif, and then Balder says, "'Twas just a warning, Thunder God. He did not mean us harm." And Thor gets up, he's real mad. He says, "I say thee this, blazing anger doth fill my heart, but with one blow I shatter yon cosmic field, for mighty Mjolnir must be mine." So he shatters the force field that Silver Surfer has put on his hammer, and then Silver Surfer starts to realize what's going on. He says, "He possessed more strength than I could know, but did not choose to use it against me. He must have suspected from the beginning that I was merely duped. Such a one must never be my enemy." So he is realizing that he's been betrayed. And I think I skipped this panel, but it says, "I sense that I have been misled, betrayed by the one who brought me here. But right or wrong, one fact remains: no one calls me coward." So that's why he shot that warning shot. And then when Thor did his broke the barrier to his hammer, and then he's starting to realize all this, and he says, "But if I have misjudged Thor, the fault is Loki's. Loki who has deceived me." So Loki here finally realizes, the jig is up and he's failed. And he says, "My plan hath failed. The mortal perceives the truth. Loki is undone. Yet with him gone, there be no proof against me." So Loki is like, "If I can get him out of here, there's no proof that I ever did any of this." So Loki just uses his magic and he says, "Thus back to Earth I send him. From my sight forever. Let him be gone." So Silver Surfer just disappears, and they're like, "Oh no, what just happened? He hath vanished like a fading spark, and I sense the game hath ended." And then he says, "Still his valor hath illumined the realm with a light that shall glow for ages." So they're always going to remember this, the time the Silver Surfer came to Asgard and tore everything up. And so now it goes to the Silver Surfer floating in space, and he says, "Once more I'm bound, I'm earthbound, trapped once again behind the barrier of Galactus. But never will my heart surrender, never will my struggle cease. Some day, somehow, the time will come when the Silver Surfer shall be free." And then it teases the next issue, says, "Next, he comes from the beyond." So that is the end of the Silver Surfer's tussle with Loki and Thor and Asgard. Loki had a grand plan made up, but of course it did not work out, and Loki failed once again to stop Thor. Thor, of course, won Silver Surfer over by his, demeanor and the way he carried himself and how all the people loved him and tried to fight for him, and it wasn't enough to convince the Silver Surfer that this guy was evil. So he knew something was amiss, and it was all, brought out into the light. And then Loki just gave up and brought him home. So Silver Surfer once again did not get anywhere in finding his love or getting out of Earth. He just took a little tour like he did last issue with Mephisto. But eventually, hopefully, the Silver Surfer will be able to reach Zenlaw again and Shalabal and find, his beloved and be reunited. Now, I'm sure it probably does happen, but I've never read an issue where that happens. So maybe eventually we'll get there and I'll read that with you and we can figure it out. So that is the end of issues 1, 2, 3, and 4 in this volume 1 trade. I think I'm probably going to do a bonus episode because this does have one more issue, and it is the Fantastic Four King Size Special. And it has a lot of stuff in this issue, but it does have a special bonus Silver Surfer complete feature length thriller. So it has an issue here before the series of the Silver Surfer. Maybe we'll get into that next week before I actually jump to something different. I might be going to DC and trying to grab a Batman comic or something like that. But I also want to read some X-Men because X-Men 97 is coming out, and I really like the X-Men. So that might be what's coming up pretty soon. We'll see. But maybe one more episode of Silver Surfer, and then we'll switch to something new. But thanks for joining me. I'll see you again next time on Rick Reads Comics.